Hey guys, back with another video for you on Native American relations with U.S. government during Jackson's presidency. I'm going to go back here. So as President Jackson began governing, it became really apparent that he did not like the American Indians. The issue came from settlers who were moving to the American frontier, moving westward onto the American frontier. They couldn't come to agreements with the Native Americans. Native Americans at this time, and still largely today, their culture believed that they did not believe in the concept of land ownership. It seemed preposterous to them that somebody could say that I paid money for this little chunk of land, and therefore it belongs to me now. I'm the only one who's allowed to use it. Native Americans at that time didn't see it that way. The land was just there in nature to be used and to be cared for by all living things. And so settlers and natives weren't able to really come eye to eye on land agreements. Now, sometimes these treaties, there were treaties that would settle these disagreements. And so these settlers would have Native Americans sign treaties to say, okay, well, you can use this such and such amount of land where my tribe lives. Problem there was a lot of times these treaties were signed at gunpoint. So these settlers would come in, point their guns at Native Americans and say, okay, sign this treaty or I'm going to shoot you. And so the Native American, it's an easy decision for them to make then. I don't want to be shot, so I'm gonna sign this treaty. But even when natives didn't sign treaties, they were still pushed off their homelands. And really what the government wanted to do, and what Andrew Jackson wanted the government to do, was to force all Native American tribes to move west, away from the lands where Americans were trying to settle. So in order to prevent this from happening to them, a lot of the tribes in the South started to develop a white culture so they wouldn't get pushed out. So what's this mean? They would start farming the land. They learned how to read and how to write. They would start dressing like the white settlers did. Now the Cherokee already had their own written language, so they were kind of ahead of some of the other tribes who maybe had a spoken language but didn't have some sort of written language where they would need to read. But there were 5 tribes in the South who especially tried to farm, read and write, dress like the white settlers, and the Americans called these tribes, these southern tribes, the 5 civilized tribes. So this includes the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, and the Seminole Native Americans. But still, Andrew Jackson kind of leaned on Congress a little bit, asking them to pass the Indian Removal Act in 1830. And so that gave the president the power to make these treaties with Native Americans. And by signing these treaties, what President Jackson was told the natives was that, okay, all we're doing here is just trading land here in the South for land in the West. So if you'll sign this treaty, we're just going to give you a plot of land over here out west somewhere. What it did not allow the president to do, though, was use military force to kick Native Americans off their homeland. So again, Jackson was doing a lot of the same thing the settlers were doing. He was coming in, forcing natives to trade their land at gunpoint, using the army to do that. That was not in the provision of the Indian Removal Act. And it got taken to the Supreme Court, and said that the Supreme Court said that the natives had a right to keep their land. If they didn't want to give it up, they didn't have to. Andrew Jackson said, well, I disagree, and I'm going to do what I want anyway. And so he started using the military to force all natives in the South to move west to Oklahoma, particularly the Cherokee Indians. In similar fashion to today, Americans went to D.C. to protest. So we see protests that occur all the time in D.C. today. And so folks went to D.C. to protest the removal because they were totally uncomfortable and knew that it was pretty wrong the way Jackson was abusing his executive powers. But the removal still continued. And then when Martin Van Buren became president after Andrew Jackson, he continued the process and ended up forcing 17,000 Cherokees to Oklahoma out of Georgia. And on that trip, there were 4,000 of them, 4,000 Native Americans who died. And that might be what you've heard referred to as the Trail of Tears. That's what we call it. You might have heard it referred to that. But this is just kind of a 10,000-foot view of Jackson and President Jackson's relation with the Native Americans. Watch this video to help you out with this lesson. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll be happy to help you guys.